Hello and welcome to this meeting of the Economy, Skills, Transport and Environment Scrutiny Board, which is being live streamed. My name is Councillor Laura Rollins and I'm Chair for this meeting. Can I please ask all attendees to mute their microphones unless they have been invited to speak. If anyone wishes to speak, please use the raise hand feature or send a message using the chat feature and I'll invite you to turn on your microphone at the appropriate point. When you're finished speaking, please remember to turn off your microphone. First, can I ask members of the committee to present themselves in turn? So, Councillor Eaves.
Councillor Susan Eaves, Raleigh Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Giles.
Councillor Luke Giles, Wednesbury North, member of the board.
Councillor Hussain.
Councillor Mushtaq Hussain, representing Albury Ward.
Thank you. And we've had apologies from Councillor Hackett and Councillor Sanders. Have any members got any interests in matters to be discussed at the meeting or the existence of nature of any party political whip on any matter to be discussed to declare? No. And thank you. Are the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of September accepted as a true record?
Yes.
Thank you. So if we move on to item 4, so that's the reset and recovery, and we're with you, Alison, I believe.
Yes, that's right. So I'll share my screen. Won't be a moment. I know you've had these sent out, but just trying to see where they are. Actually, I can't seem to get them to share. Sorry about this. Apologies, I have them open ready and I can't share them on the screen, so can you share them at all, Deb? Are you able to?
Yes, sorry, Alison, I'm just finding them for you.
Thank you. I think it's because I opened them in PDF, but I should be able to try them in PowerPoint. My sincere apologies. Right, I'll try it again. Oh, it's still not working. I'm so sorry about this. I don't know what's happening with my screen. Are you able to do it?
I'm just trying, and what I'm going to do is share the pack because I can't share the slides either, Alison, so bear with me.
Well, at least it's not just me. So I know everybody's got them though, so it really was an update on the services for people.
I am too having problems, but I will continue to try. If you want to start with the first.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, I'll just talk us through it. Rather, we can't share them. There's something happening with the systems this evening, so my sincere apologies. And hopefully at some stage Deb might bring them up, but I think you do all have them in your packs. So a little bit about how we've been managing the services that relate to the Economy, Skills, Transport and Environment Scrutiny Board. So firstly, highway services. So what we've been doing is we've been continuing to operate the statutory services, obviously. They've operated as they have done since April with precautions, and we've monitored and adjusted those as we've needed to. We're looking at pre-COVID levels of activity are expected to continue for infrastructure maintenance. So, for example, we've still been continuing to put forward schemes such as virtually lighting renewal, bridge works, utility works, school crossing patrols, really trying to make sure that we're doing any work that we need to on any improvements as we were pre-COVID. Traffic levels are interesting. Certainly under the full lockdown from April, it was at 30 to 40% between April and June, and then July to December, 50 to 60% of what it had been, and it's now gone up to around 70 to 80%. So you're seeing quite a lot of congestion, traffic levels increasing, and far more use of the highways, really. What we're also seeing, though, is parking demand and also things like parking income reducing, and we're expecting that to happen again. We've done some emergency active travel measures, which many of you might have seen. These have been under review. We had the money sent through to us from government, and some have been more popular than others. It was about encouraging cycling and walking, and anybody who's driven into Oldbury will see some of those cycle paths that have been put into place. There was further things within Smethwick which we've changed because they weren't being used. The feedback wasn't positive. But what we're trying to do is look at ways that we can actually test new ways of encouraging people to cycle and to walk more. The parking reinforcement, we have got that in place, and it is re-emphasised, but we have tried to make sure that parking enforcement officers are aware of any COVID-related incidents, which there have been more of, I think, as people probably get more COVID fatigue, and this is particularly before the second lockdown, so that they're aware and that they're wearing the correct PPE. Anybody got any questions on highways before I continue? So, development planning and building control. Since March, the first lockdown, what we've seen really is the service continuing, but all of them working from home, with occasional trips into the office to print off documents where we've needed to do that. Building control, land charge services have just continued as usual. As you'd expect, there was a dip in the number of applications that we received in early summer because some construction sites have closed, some house sales fell away. However, they're now back to previous levels, and with land charges, I think particularly because of house sales going through and also stamp duty, what we're finding is that there's an increased demand. Really, the only area where activity has been suspended has been the safety at sports grounds work and the planning committee site visits. And what we've been doing with planning is that a lot of that has been where we've sent pictures to the planning committee, where there may be a visit occasionally with one officer, or we've tended to use things like Google where possible, or, as I say, pictures. We're making sure that with the majority of the applications, where we do have to actually visit, or with building control where we have to visit, that we're obviously adhering to social distancing, face coverings. At the moment, clearly, we're not doing that, but up to now, we have been doing that, and making sure that any visits were held in a proper COVID safe way. We have got some staff who've been coming into the council house on a rota basis to do the printing and the signs that we have to put up for planning. Again, this is being done on a minimal basis at the moment, very little as well. What we've also been doing is, where necessary, we've been releasing staff to help in other areas, because this is an area where we can do that. Moving on to spatial planning, which is more your regeneration teams and the business growth. That's been operating from home. No changes are expected during the lockdown, but all of them are working from home. We had looked, and we would like to look when we eventually come through this, at some of the teams coming back in occasionally when we look at our new operating model, particularly transport and planning and regeneration, particularly those working on the town investment plans, to occasionally pull things together. But, you know, they have managed to get all of the town investment plans in. The business growth team have done an amazing job putting in and processing all of the business grant applications. And what we're doing now is working through the latest grants that have come through. So continuing to do all of that. We're also doing additional work with businesses and the chamber because of the expected pressures as we prepare for Brexit, or businesses prepare. So sort of trying to raise the awareness there, and for people not to forget what they need to do given all of the COVID restrictions and things going on. In terms of waste services, this is changing daily, actually, as you can imagine, and I'm sure that you're getting lots of your residents contacting you. When I did the presentation, there were 27 staff self-isolating, so you'll see that in the pack. It is now more than 30. Clearly, we're getting some staff returning from self-isolating and then other staff going off, and we have had a few tested cases, which has meant that we then put into place the self-isolation. I'm really pleased to say that even though some of the some people's bins have sort of taken an extra day to collect, on the whole, the teams have managed to keep on top of the waste collections, including the garden waste. And the garden waste is due to finish the 27th of November, but we've managed to keep up to date with that. And I was worried that we would need to suspend that early, actually, but we haven't needed to, which I'm hoping isn't famous last words, actually. So, because I know that more people have had to self-isolate this week. The tonnages have continued to be around 30% higher than normal, particularly including the garden waste. Everybody's been doing their gardens in the 2 lockdowns, which has required an additional 5 support crews and regular overtime to deliver the service. We're having daily briefings. I'm actually joining those. We're having 3 times a week at the moment, and I'm joining those very early to go through to check what's happening, to make sure that residents are kept up to date, that we've got communications, that we've got the staff in place. And what we're doing at the minute is we're hoping we're going to get the garden waste finished. But what I'm not wanting to do is to agree to reduce the street cleansing, because obviously we've got leaves at the moment. What we want to do, especially if people are out taking daily exercises, to avoid people tripping or slipping on leaves or any other waste. So we're trying to keep all of that together whilst making sure that health and safety procedures are followed. And then finally, the strategic assets and land. We've got quite a few areas that fall within that, and clearly the markets, they had been operating following the first lockdown, but then we've had to revert back to essential retail within the market. So we'd actually moved most of the essential retailers into the food hall in West Bromwich, and any outdoor markets again closed to non-essential retailers but open for essential. So food, pet supplies, things like that, really, that they remain open for. In terms of corporate buildings, the core buildings are remaining open to key workers and to facilitate essential services. What we've also got going on in the council house is refurbishments as well, because they are allowed to continue within the government guidelines. So the whole of the one-stop shop area and the area where the comms team used to be is all, and where elections has been based of late, all of that is being refurbished, and new space, new cash areas, new cash facilities, really really good facilities actually being developed there, which will be good when that opens. All other construction work, so urban design building services, for example, that's been ongoing, and most of our contracts are ongoing. So the housing that you've seen happen, some of the delivery there over in Tipton. We've still got the aquatic centre being built. That's allowed, and they're all on track. The commercial estates team, that's still ongoing. We're obviously looking at where people might have difficulties in paying, but we're trying to work with tenants to try and maintain that particular rental income stream and work alongside people. And then also with facilities management, what's been really key is to keep the cleansing and maintenance regime to allow the buildings to be opened, but to increase that and obviously make sure that we've got enough stands out there with, hand sanitizer and signs up telling people what they should be doing, making sure that we're replenishing soap, all of those sorts of things. So we have kept that going in the meantime to make sure that everything is running smoothly as possible. So I think that's it really in terms of an update on the reset and recovery. And I'm sorry about the slides, but has anybody got any questions?
Any questions from anybody? I think my only sort of question would be sort of going into this second lockdown, given the experience from the first lockdown, do we feel that actually those services that we have been able to maintain, we will continue to be able to maintain it should lockdown be extended past?
It's a good question, and it's one that we're spending time with the unions, because when I mentioned the estate services, there is a different type of estate service that we have that sits more within housing, so tends to fit with the other scrutiny. But that's been a concern to the unions, because we have had caretakers still going into communal areas, keeping the place clean, which I think is really essential to prevent COVID spreading, and particularly in some of our high rise. What we've agreed with the unions on that one is reduced hours and making sure that people don't spend time in sort of general areas having breaks, so that there aren't too many people. Similarly with this, looking at the guidance this time, it is different to the first lockdown. I mean, clearly we know that. We know the schools are still open, but it does make it clear that they would expect most services to continue. And for example, and again, this isn't necessarily a service that we normally cover at this scrutiny, but it does talk about people being able to go into other people's homes if they're carrying out work, which is another important point that is in the guidance. But again, people have to be safe. They have to be safe not just for our employees, but also, our residents. Absolutely important that we keep people safe. So it'll be interesting to see if it is extended or it is taken further, whether the guidance will change. But for now, I think the services that we've got will probably continue to go forward. Again, depending on whether we need to look at utilisation of staff for other priorities, thinking about things that are coming in the future around testing, vaccinations, help with the vulnerable. A lot of our staff in neighbourhoods have been supporting some of these other areas, including things like COVID marshals. And I think that's something that we would then have to say, well, which services do we need to prioritise and which services can we move into other areas?
Thank you. Councillor Giles?
Yeah, obviously street cleansing is something that I think has dropped off. And as you're going around the body, you do see, quite a lot of weeding. So I think we're falling short of the expectations and the targets on that. Will we be addressing that, and will we be picking that slack back up?
In terms of the street cleansing, some of that did drop off a little bit when we had a lot of the teams out, actually. These are the circle services. When we thought we weren't going to be able to continue with some of the bins or the garden waste, and we wanted to make sure that was collected. What we've done more recently is make sure that the street cleansing is in place, particularly if it's leaf clearance and other things, because it's dangerous for people. I think you mentioned weeds there, and a lot of that is with the grounds maintenance team. And you may be aware that it has taken us time to actually get around. All of the borough has now had the grass cut. There will be further work that will need to be done to tidy up in some areas. Another area that we've recently made sure are open as well, because this came out in the government guidance, was play areas, actually. That we recently had kept play areas closed at the advice of public health, and we put signs up. I think a lot of the signs were taken down by people who were frustrated. A lot of people were putting their children over the fences, actually, because we'd locked them, and they were still using the equipment, so we were still checking that. But in some areas, what we'd done, we hadn't actually cut the grass in those areas to try and put people off, I suppose, using the facilities when we weren't agreeing that they were used. That's now in the guidance saying that play areas will all open. So we have made sure that all play areas are open. All of the grass in the play areas has been cut, and we've put signs up advising people that if they do use the play areas, that they really do ought to clean each of the items on the play area before the children use that, so the swings or whatever, because we can't realistically put in people to be cleansing in between children using those facilities. So it will get picked up, I think, Councillor Giles, and we are aware of some of the areas, but it's just taking into account the amount of staff that sometimes work together. They do work in small teams, in bubbles, but if one member of staff suddenly gets symptoms, then it means the others having to go and test. And if somebody is actually positive, then it does mean them all self-isolating. So it just means we have less staff around. So if you'll bear with us, but I think we're dealing with a few specific areas that you've mentioned to have a look at those. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that.
Okay, are there any other questions? I think just a final comment from me as well, just to say, thank you for all the work that's been done, and that we have managed to keep most of the services running and at the same sort of levels is quite a testament to the work that has been done. So if there's no further questions, then we'll move on to item 5, which is the draft Sandwell skills strategy. Chris, are we with you?
Yes, happy to take this on, Chair. I know Councillor Singh was looking to join us today, but he may have been having difficulties getting in. But I know what he wanted to say. This is quite exciting. It's the Sandwell Skills Strategy. It's the first time in the local authority we've had a Sandwell Skills Strategy, and the strategy represents a collective skills vision for the borough and has been a collaborative effort to shape the contents and recommended actions that you'll see in the paper you've had tonight. The document we sent you outlines our overarching strategy, sets out the key skills, the challenges, the opportunities, strategic priorities for the borough, and also the reset and recovery strategic work that we all want to do following from this. We've consulted really widely with active participation across the borough to make sure we're representing local communities and businesses in this plan, and engagement has taken place with residents, schools, businesses, voluntary organisations, education establishments and key stakeholders to contribute to the development of the strategy and explore the best routes and methods to tackle the borough-wide skills issues. So a lot of work's got into getting to this point. There's a role for our Employment and Skills Partnership in overseeing the strategy and how it works once it's in place, and making sure it's actioned based on rigorous things, holding people rigorously to account. So the meeting tonight is really important as part of the development of the strategy. in that we really would like any views or comments that you might like to make about the strategy, any things you might like us to consider, and any thoughts and comments aside from that as well. To help us through this strategy, I'm going to bring in the two architects, which is Kelly and Adele, who are going to talk us through. Now, I'm not sure if their PowerPoints are going to work. I think they may have the same issue as everybody else, but luckily they know the stuff inside and out and will be able to drive us through. So I'm going to hand over, and look, theirs is working, technology at its best. So I'm going to hand straight over to them, Chair. Thank you.
I wasn't sure that was going to work, but so everyone's seeing that, are they?
Yeah.
Yeah, fabulous. So Chris has just done this slide. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Kelly Thomas, Employment Skills Manager. So the strategy then, obviously within the strategy there's a lot of information contained about our skills challenges. We have used pre-pandemic data to baseline the information. The reason for that is due to the fact that we started the skills strategy prior to the pandemic, and really if we had used the pandemic information, which obviously has exacerbated the situation, it would have skewed our information. So we wanted to make sure that the actual figures that we were looking at are from the actual skills position, because obviously we had a skills challenge prior to the pandemic. So some of the challenges that have been highlighted in the strategy, I don't think there'll be any particular surprises here. We have a low skills level in our population, with fewer people qualified to level 4, more people who don't have, who have no qualifications compared with other areas. We also have poverty for those who are in employment, which is driven by our low wage levels. We also have skills shortages faced by our employers, particularly in roles that are those that are the more higher advanced technical skills. And we also have lower attainment by young people through early years primary and secondary education. And what we have done when we did the strategy, we identified a series of action plans, one of which was our Reset and Recovery action plan, which really we wanted to use to bring us back to that starting position, so those figures that are contained within the strategy. So we have looked at obviously the impact of the pandemic and the additional challenges that have presented themselves due to COVID, one of which is the large-scale redundancies and a shift in growth sectors. So where we may have advised people to go into certain sectors which were growing, the pandemic obviously has made an impact on some of those sectors. So that is something we need to consider. An increased need for digital skills and access to equipment, that came out hugely, particularly in regards to the voluntary sector informing us about people struggling with digital literacy and having digital equipment, to the employers that have had to completely change their businesses and upskill their workforce to be able to work in a more digital way. Young people facing more competition for opportunities. We know young people have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, but I would say that actually it's not just young people that are being facing that more competition. We are finding that people with higher level skills are applying for lower skilled jobs, which obviously in turn has a knock-on effect of those at the lower end of the market, and it's more difficult for them to achieve employment as well. And then mental health and lack of resilience. Again, that came out hugely in our consultation and our engagement in regards to mental health being a huge barrier, and it's presented itself even more so during COVID for people who are unemployed and those who are employed as well. On to a more positive note about our skills aspiration. So what we wanted within the document was a collective vision for skills that was challenging and it was ambitious for both our residents and our businesses. So we wanted to turn it on its head. We wanted to improve skills attainment at all levels. We want more people to be able to move into sustainable employment. We want more people to move into higher skilled jobs, and we want more skilled employees available to support our businesses.
But what we didn't want is for these documents to sit in isolation, because certainly they don't. They do support the 2030 vision, and we've mentioned on here ambitions 3 and 4, but certainly I think they fit into many more. Inclusive economy deal, we refer to the skills strategy as the skills deal. So certainly a lot of the information is aligned to the inclusive economy deal, because obviously it's supporting that skills infrastructure. And community wealth building, so the actions contained within the community wealth building action plan very much again aligned to the skills strategy and the action plans that we'll be developing. So there is synergy within the work, supporting economic growth as well. And we'll also make sure that it aligns to the business growth plan, because obviously whatever support we give to our residents needs to equally work alongside our support for businesses as well. And in regards to a high quality education, looking at all the way from school up to adulthood, having that sort of lifelong journey, and making sure that people have access to good education throughout their life. And I think Adele's doing the next slide.
Yeah, if I take over here, right, thank you. As part of the strategy, we wanted to look at the skills for the future. So looking forward to what we can expect to be the sectors of the future and the future demands of industry going forward. Certain things that we know are coming. Automation will have a change on the types of roles that are available and the skills requirements of the people who do those. We still don't know how long this pandemic will last. The final resting place of the sectors and the skills needs at that point, and also the consideration of Brexit, that's not finalised yet. There's still changes to happen with the restrictions of trade and the changing workforces, so there's things that we need to consider on that area as well. The strategy has always been developed with the aim that we will develop specific sectoral action plans, and that's still the expectation from this. What we want to do is draw on the sectors that are the growth sectors for the borough, and we had a good idea of what those would be before the pandemic. I think it's important for us now to take stock and see where we go with this before we start writing those plans, to ensure that we're pointing people in the right direction, really. Some of the key things that have come out that we need to consider are digital needs at all levels, really. I think the pandemic has changed the way that people use computers and equipment, the internet. We would never have been doing meetings in this way before, and we're not the only ones that are working like this. There's other things that I need to consider, such as marketing, social media, the way that businesses use new technologies to be able to work in their industries, and artificial intelligence is a big thing that's coming forward, and that might filter into a lot of workplaces. It's important to also think about the green industry and how we can roll this out now. This has been something that's been an aspiration for the country, really, but I think the pandemic's forced this to happen a lot quicker than most industries would have expected. So some of the sustainable fuels, some of the recycling, as Alison mentioned, the walking, cycling, looking at that in more detail and how we can build that into future skills and development. And then also building in the STEAM subjects so that we can work with schools to develop some of this thinking with young people that they can take forward into the workplace in years to come. The Reset and Recovery Plan has identified 2 specific industries that have rocketed forward. They're health and social care and transport and logistics. They were already quite strong areas for Sandwell anyway, but I think nationally there's a lot more opportunities and careers within those sectors, and that's something that we need to pay attention to and support people to access those roles moving forward. Some of the key actions that we looking at from the core strategy, so this is the pre-pandemic information, was improving the number of people or raising the number of people with a qualification. We have a large percentage of people within the borough who've got no qualifications at all, and also improving those with high level qualifications, raising aspirations for people to move into higher paid work, which also then will free up opportunities for people below. We want to support people with mental health and disabilities to be able to access more provision. A lot of the mainstream provision that we've got there at the moment is not always suitable for those people. Preparing young people for life and work, starting at school, but having a journey for them. Creating a network of specialists, so knowing the best providers for each of the sectors that we've talked about and how we can support people on that journey from the offset. Apprenticeships is really important to the borough and to young people moving forward. It will probably be one of the key ways in which young people will be able to get some work experience. So we want to try and look at how we can develop a wide range of opportunities, but also looking at the levels that are available so that people who've been made redundant can look to change sectors and move forward in that route. We're really keen to deliver inclusive growth and utilise some of the regeneration programmes that are happening around the borough, including the house builds, etc., to get residents the experience that they need to be able to get careers in both construction on the sites, but then the end user jobs as well. And then through the strategy we've developed, well, and probably built upon some strong partnership working, and we want to make sure that we keep doing that so we can maximise resources to ensure that our residents have got the best support. In terms of the reset and recovery themes, there's some overlaps, but there's some key things that I want to bring your attention to. We're finding that we need to relook at some of the school support. Some things need to change quite quickly. The way that young people may apply for jobs or the sectors that they may consider, we need to start looking at that now. Support for 18 to 24-year-olds, as you'll be aware, this group are the hardest hit from the pandemic in terms of job losses and impacts from exams, university placement, colleges. This group are needing the most support going forward, and we've built the actions in to support them. Digital poverty and digital skills is obviously a big concern, and we're looking at how we can draw in funding from other areas to support equipment and internet access for people. Supporting businesses is a key one, both in terms of skills for growth, where sectors can grow and develop, also looking at how we can support them where they need to make redundancies. And then there's also something in looking at how we can support residents to become self-employed where that's something that they wish to do. So a big element of business support is needed. We're looking at how we can promote careers for the future, healthcare, teaching, social care, some of the public sector jobs that we know will be around for years to come, alongside those growth sectors as they're identified. Wanting to support adults who need to retrain, where perhaps they've been employed in hospitality, culture, etc., and need to look at new areas of work, how we can support them to retrain alongside their other commitments. And this overlaps a little bit with the over 50s, where we want to support those people who have families and financial commitments, what need support to be able to ascertain what the best routes are for them moving forward. We did identify mental health and resilience as a key theme, but realised that this actually is an overarching need across all areas, so that within the action plan there's actions to support mental health and resilience within all of the other key themes.
Did you want me to do this one, Adele?
Yeah.
Councillor Singh was going to do this one. That's why we've confused ourselves. Sorry. I presume Councillor Singh's, is he still not here?
No.
No. Okay, because I can't see anyone, apologies. Just to finish us off then, so what we wanted to make sure of the skills strategy was that it wasn't a document that just sits on a shelf, that very much there is an action-based approach, so that we have got in there some of those short, medium and long-term actions. As Adele's mentioned, there are a series of action plans that we are going to be developing, but we need robust actions in place to ensure that we are monitoring those outcomes, and that they will be both sectoral and for specific cohorts, but flexible enough so that if we need to add in an additional need, that we're able to do that as well. As we've said, the reset and recovery plan is well underway to bring us back to our starting position, and it will be taken back to the employment skills meetings bi-monthly to check on progress. We are also developing a performance management framework or dashboard, so that we can look at our key performance indicators, monitor our progress towards those ambitions, and to look at the gap reduction towards the region and nationally, really, because we obviously want to reduce the gaps that we currently have. But also to use that intelligence, so to look at, we know that say for example BAME are more impacted by COVID, so we also want to use some of that data to look at our more disadvantaged groups, so that we can put some targeted and positive actions in place should we need to. And that is the end of our presentation. I'm hoping that's gonna stop sharing now. Yes.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Adele. So it's really over to you, Chair, and the group to see if there's anything you think we need to be thinking about that we probably haven't picked up yet, or if there's any comments you'd like to make.
I think the first comment for me, looking at the sort of the report, was that it would be quite helpful to have a sort of slightly more, not necessarily the actual KPIs, but something a little bit more specific about what the ambitions are, because the ambitions that are in there are quite broad and haven't got sort of specific timescales. And that kind of leads on to my second question then. Realistically, if we're talking about getting people up to sort of, increasing the number of people with qualifications and level 4 qualifications, realistically, what sort of time game, because obviously those qualifications take time to complete regardless of when you start them. So what sort of timescales are we looking at for the?
I think one of the things sorry, do you want me to respond, Chris, or are you going to?
You go ahead, Kelly. I'll come in after. Okay.
Apologies. I was just going to say, one of the things we've looked at, we haven't got the specific dates yet, because I think that's what we're due to develop as part of the performance management framework. But I'll take your point, because that's been mentioned in some of the consultation that we've done, and that we certainly need to bottom that down. We did look, say for example, the no qualification data, we looked over our time series over the past 10 years to look at the changes. And to be honest, it had gone up and down. So I think we need to make sure we've got realistic targets in there that can be achieved, but that are challenging as well. So I think that what we suggested is, once this goes through Cabinet on the 9th of December, that we develop our performance management framework, and we agree those indicators, but with realistic targets and timeframes. And that's why some of the things are shorter term and we can do, and we can have those very specific targets, and some of the other things might be a longer term aim, but we will be looking at increments so that we can improve our position, but maybe we want to look at our further away position of where we want to be.
Thank you. And then the other point, which is possibly not for in this strategy, because it's possibly a bit of a crossover thing, but it's that point that because we have this skills gap in the borough, it's been quite difficult to get investment from business, and particularly some of the sort of more forward-thinking future sort of sectors of the future. Is there any sort of plans? So if we fill that skills gap, how are we then tying that into sort of generating that investment from those sorts of businesses and sectors, so that the employment and we keep the skills and the employment within the borough? rather than losing it elsewhere.
Okay, I mean, this is about attracting and keeping employers, and actually Alison's put her hand straight up on this one, so I'm going to let her talk. Okay, Alison.
Hi there. I think, thank you for letting me come in. It's probably not so much to do with not attracting business, because actually a lot of the time that we maybe don't get business is because we sometimes don't have the land available. We don't have huge tracts of land, but we do have a lot of really good business in the borough. With high skilled jobs. I think the key thing is, which has been raised in the skills strategy, is that people travel in to get those high paid jobs. So it is about, so I don't think we wouldn't attract people. I think the nature of our borough and the proximity to lots of other places, and especially with things like the Midland Metro extension, means people can actually get in and get the jobs. I think it's more about how do we make sure our people get the jobs so that they stay within the borough. So I hope that answers your question. I don't think it puts people off. I think we just want those jobs for our residents.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No, I think from my perspective, it was just that, but just having that bit more specific. I can never say that word. You know what word I'm trying to say. Just to kind of put some bones on it. But I think overall the strategy and the ambitions obviously align with everything else that we're trying to do, and I can't see that there's anything sort of that's up to be missed. Sorry, Alison, was that you?
No, I just suddenly, if you don't mind, Chair, I thought it was really important actually to say that with a strategy like this, it has to be in conjunction with all the other things that we do, because one of the things with a skills strategy, we can bring the skills in, but then if we haven't got the nice housing, we haven't got the nice spaces, people inevitably then move out of the borough, don't they? And we still end up with that skills gap. So it is really, really important that it's part of our wider vision, isn't it? And that all of the other things that we're doing will help attract and keep people in the borough once they've got the skills. So I'm probably saying something that's completely and utterly obvious, but I thought it would be quite nice just to say that at the end.
If I could just quickly come in there as well, I was going to say something similar, Alison. If you look at the data for the number of people with no qualifications, we've actually got worse over time, and that shows that there's actually a movement of people who have got skills out of the borough. If we can try and work on the housing, the job offer, the skills offer, the parks, all the elements within Salmon. I think that's where we've tried to tie in with the inclusive economy deal as well. So it's not working in isolation. Everything is complementing each other, and hopefully we'll make progress in all areas then.
Yeah, and I'd just like to sort of say to everybody, I think this is something that sort of everybody has got much better at over the last few years, about this more sort of like collaborative, holistic way of approaching things, rather than having sort of lots of standalone strategies that, like I say, do sit on a shelf. So brilliant. Are there any other questions from any board members? No? Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. If we move on, just bear with me. So the date of the next meeting is in for the 4th of February. However, there is some work that needs to be done in relation to the climate change programme. So what I would propose to the board members is that we schedule an additional meeting for some time in December or January to look at that. So the strategy is going to Cabinet, and the board will be asked to monitor the implementation, and we'd be looking at probably setting up a work group to monitor progress, which would be a long-term project over a number of years, although I think the first targets are 2022, I believe. So is members happy for us to put that additional meeting in?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, Chair, that's all right.
Lovely. Deb, can I leave that with you to schedule that additional meeting, please?
Yes, Chair, I'll put that in the work programme.
Lovely, thank you. Thanks everybody for your time this evening, and I'll speak to you all soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Night,
See ya.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.